We are OPNoobs.com, PC Gaming by PC Gamers. Today we're doing one of our dev talks, and we have with us Joe Radak of Eerie Bear Games. How you doing today,
Hello.
Joe?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Doing really well, thanks. I really appreciate you being here with us today. So Joe and I got to meet each other at PAX East this past I think it was 2 weekends ago now. And
Yeah. Oh God, has it been that long?
yeah, I know it seems like
Oh,
yesterday. I'm still recoiling from the whole experience, but I think
I'm still catching up on sleep.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think you've got an even more intense story than I do. I remember when I walked up to your booth and I met Noah first, and he said that you guys had only had 4 hours to prepare for PAX East. Do you
Yep.
mind just telling us about that story and what happened?
Yeah. Um, about it was Wednesday morning. I live in I'm in northern New Jersey-ish, and Wednesday morning I drive down to Philadelphia with my dad to help move my sister out of her apartment and into a new one. And while I'm doing that in the middle of the hot Philadelphia spring, uh, my phone starts like blowing up with these messages from a friend of mine named Tim and Craig, and they're both like, "Hey, these people they need a VR game. You made one, right?" Like, yeah, I've told you this before, guys. Hey, but they want it. They have a booth at PAX and they need a VR game. I'm like, all right, fine, just tell me the tweet. And so they sent me the tweet, and I was just like, well, I made Light Repair Team number 4. Why don't? And I was like, hey, why don't you? We'll be there already. It's okay. And that was we being Noah and I. And originally, like an hour or so later, we got a tweet back saying, sorry, the space was already filled. So I carry on with the rest of the day, and about 5 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Standard Time, we're finally done moving everything in. Noah's showed up to help move because he was going to go. We were traveling together. He's down in Harrisburg. Um, he swung by, helped finish the move, and then we were going to drive back up to my house. And right as we were leaving, and like I'm not exaggerating on this, right as we were walking out of my sister's new apartment, I get a tweet saying, "Hey, we'd like to show your game at the booth. Could you please email me?" And I turned to Noah. I'm like, Noah, they want our game. And he goes, oh, God.
Yeah, he told me that was supposed to be his vacation.
It was supposed to be actually both of our
Both of your
vacations because
vacations?
we've both been working pretty hard over the past few months, and we were really excited to just be able to like not work.
Yeah, yeah, I bet.
And and we talked about it later, and we're like, the only thing that we were angry about was that it ruined our vacation. In like either of us would have made the same call to do this. But
Yeah.
anyways, but we're like 2 hours away from my house. So it's 5:30, we're hot, we're tired, we're sweaty, and we're about to have to go deal with this PAX thing. And so we're driving out of Philadelphia talking about it, and I'm like emailing the person on my phone. I'm like, all right, hey, yeah, we'll be there. What do you need us to do? And my phone was running out of battery too, which made it even more suspenseful. Um, and we're driving out and we were thinking of all the things that we were going to be needing, and I was like, oh gosh, we need a carrying case. I can't take this thing on a train. Okay, like I had to bring my own Vive. I was like, we can't bring this on the train. Oh man, we need tripods for the base stations. Like, what happens if they don't have like a girder system or something? Like, we can't hang them or anything. And we're like, oh no, we all need these things. And we're like, wait, look over there, there's a Best Buy, stop right there. So
That's
we're
awesome.
so literally on the way out of Philadelphia, we're swinging by a Best Buy that I mean, I used to live in Philly, so I knew it was there. But I was like, wait, it's right there. Let's go. So we pull in and we're panic buying all these things that we need. So like the tripods, the case, flash
Running as
drives to
fast
carry
as
the
you
build on,
can.
and we're spending like 30 minutes there. I'm calling my fiance up saying, hey, sorry, we're gonna be late. This whole thing's happening. Um, and then we spend the next 2 hours driving home trying to figure out exactly what we're going to do. And we finally get home around 7:30, 8 o'clock. We're both hungry, so we go out and get some food after we drop everything off. And we come back probably by 9 o'clock. We're sitting there and we're like, all right, we got to prepare for this. What do we need? So we start setting up the tripods, making sure those work. We got the builds together. We actually had a Steam build that we used that was like the launch build that we knew was stable, and a developer build that we were working on that we were hoping to launch before PAX, but some stability bugs, excuse me, some stability bugs kicked in, and we couldn't release it. But we were like, yeah, bring it anyways. Let's just do it.
Hmm.
And Noah was like, oh, we should probably make a specific build, and in hindsight we probably should have, but we didn't have time. I was tired. We had to throw all this together. We didn't know which levels we were going to use. Like, we couldn't make new levels. As much as I like to think of myself as like this wonderful level designer who can do things quickly, I'm not that good. um and so between 9 and 1 a.m., that's the 4 hours, we were preparing this entire thing. I was
Wow. This is all the
fixing
day before
lighting.
PAX.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
was the day before we were traveling to PAX. So
Yeah.
this would have been Wednesday, and then Thursday we were traveling. And so I'm spending the 4 hours where we're fixing things. Noah's making sure the tripods work. We packed up the Vive to make sure it fit into the carrying case. Thank God it did. Everything worked. Oh man, and we were worried about like, oh well, we'll just keep the receipt in case we have to like return it or something.
Yeah.
And we came out of the weekend going best investments ever. Actually, it's all sitting over here still too. Yeah, and that was it. I mean, in 4 hours, I packaged up a new build after fixing some things, and we then went to bed around 1, got up around 7:30 ish. So we're already like running, like we were already really tired, and then we didn't get a lot of sleep. We're even more tired. Took the 2-hour train to New York, 4-hour train to Boston. We got into Boston around 4:30 or so local time, so 4:30 Eastern. And I call up their contact at Cybertron PC. Fantastic people, by the way. Like they were fantastic the entire time. They were awesome. But call them up, say, hey, we're here. They go, well, why don't you just come over to the convention center? I'll give you your exhibitor passes. Which I actually had our 3-day passes in my pocket at the time.
Because you bought 3-day passes?
Yeah, I bought 3-day passes.
Yeah.
And because we were planning on going for vacation.
Right.
And within an hour of being in Boston, we were on the show floor over by the LAN area, setting up the booth.
Yeah.
And
right, I found
that for another 4 hours. And on the way back home, we swung back by the train station because there was a CVS in there. We picked up everything that we didn't either forgot to pick up or we didn't want to pick up at the time and just didn't want to because we couldn't carry too much. We were carrying everything on a train.
Yeah.
And then we went back to the hotel and just crashed.
I don't doubt that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
barely slept, and then woke up again at 7:30 to be ready on the show floor by 9.
Thank God you guys were, because Saturday was the day I went, and if you hadn't made it, I would have never met you. I was really impressed with you guys had put together a lot in a short period of time, and that kind of blew me away. And I know a lot of other people, particularly even a lot of other indie developers get a lot of support from indie booth and things like Tiny Build, and you guys are just out there on your own. You had Cybertron there, but it's really just you and Cybertron. You didn't have a huge indie organization kind of making sure you got everything you needed.
We were like so unprepared, like we weren't in any announcements.
You couldn't tell though. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it seemed like you guys had planned on being there the whole time, which pulled it off really well.
Yeah, and despite the fact that we had like no experience. This was our first time showing a game, period, anywhere at all. Like neither of us had show experience. We both had some public speaking experience, but like that was it.
Yeah, Noah says he's not good with people, but he's wrong. He was very pleasant to talk to.
Yeah. But beyond that, we were figuring things out on the fly. Like the first 3 or 4 people, our demo completely changed, like how we were doing things. The night before, we were still figuring out like which levels to use. It came down to like 2 or 3 levels, and then we were just like, we're picking this one. And that was it. I mean, we were the motto of the weekend was wing it. And so we just completely winged it. And a huge a big thanks to Lee Vermillion, who I probably just botched his last name, but creator of Modbox and Maximum VR or Maximum Destruction VR over at Alien Trap Games. Thanks to him for providing us with a VR cover, which we didn't have. If we didn't have that VR cover, our demo would have been really gross and disgusting.
So what is a VR cover?
So a VR cover, because I have my Vive right next to me here. Do I have the cover out anywhere? No. Um, so the VR cover, it goes over the top of this foam thing here.
Okay.
And it's like the one he had was cloth, which was fine. There's another one that's like a pleather leather
Mm.
thing. It's waterproof. I'm actually ordering a couple of those. Um, but it goes right over the top of this. And what you can do is it just prevents sweat from soaking in because these are just essentially sponges.
Yeah,
And
I noticed you
these
actually
will,
squeegeeing them down. You had a every time someone was finished, you actually wiped down the device and the controllers
yes,
for the next
yeah,
person.
we wiped everything down.
Yeah.
Just
Most
to keep
other
it
VR
sanitary.
demos weren't doing that, so I do
Yeah,
appreciate that.
I heard about that. I
Yeah.
heard about that, and I actually walked around because I didn't believe it, and I walked around, and there was a good chunk of VR demos doing that, and I was
Mm.
like, don't do that. If you're ever doing a VR demo, invest in disinfectant wipes and use them every single time.
Listen, Joe, it's a public safety announcement.
But the VR cover prevents sweat from building up on the foam here, and it makes it a far more enjoyable experience because it's not wet and soggy, and this will get wet and soggy within one person
Very quickly.
very very quickly, and it breaks it down too. So we might have like I brought two of these things just to be safe.
Mm.
If we didn't have that VR cover, I would have had to buy more.
More VR headsets.
I would have had to buy more foam gaskets.
Right, got you.
Um,
Yeah, I haven't. So that was the first time I actually used the HTC Vive. Was at your demo, and I have owned a DK2 before, and I've since sold that to buy my new Oculus. But my experience with the HTC Vive was better than my experience had been with the DK2 for sure. And I just was curious to know, why did you choose the HTC Vive platform over the Oculus platform?
um, it was more of an availability thing. It wasn't like I kind of fell into it. It wasn't really it wasn't something that I was intending on doing.
Had you developed for the Oculus at all, or just the
No.
just okay?
No, actually the first time I used the Oculus was after PAX.
Oh, interesting. That's funny.
I'll be 100% honest. The Rift that I got while I was at PAX would have been the first Rift that Noah and I would have used. And actually Noah had to leave before we could get it set up.
So
But
you actually bought one at the last PAX.
no, I was sent one as a developer kit.
Oh, I see. Of course, that makes sense. Yeah. That's
So I have the developer thing, and then so that was the first time I've used the Rift.
Gotcha.
Literally less than 2 weeks ago.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, so my experience was that the Vive, just for the folks at home, particularly ones that haven't used VR, the DK2 is a seated experience, and you can only just really sit at your desk. You wear it. You can track your head. It can track a little bit of motion. I know that the new Oculus does this, but it's really fundamentally a standing or seated experience. Where with the Vive, you have two laser. What do you call them? I guess they're sensors. They're sort of distance measurers. Yeah, maybe you can show us one.
Well, I don't have.
I don't know if you have one right there. It's okay if you
Oh, they're all over on my shelves over here. 'Cause
Oh,
the way
that's
I have my room set up is that I have they're base stations basically. They're big. Essentially, if I understand it correctly, they're like large laser arrays. At least I think they're laser arrays because the packaging that they came with when I got shipped, like both, I have the DK1 and the pre. Both of them came with big like class blank, what it's like class A, class B lasers.
Right.
Um,
I'm sure
warning
that's very
type of
safe.
thing. Yeah, so it's like don't crack open the screen and all that type of stuff. But they're basically
scary.
laser arrays, and they scan. They essentially scan the room. So there's one. I have one over there which you can't see, and then one opposite the room, and that provides the full room tracking.
Gotcha.
And then on the front of like the controllers here, there's little divots, and on the front of the headset, there's divots, and inside those little divots are sensors, and those sensors pick up the like tracking movement and stuff like that. And so, based on the ping of the laser array, you're able to tell depending on where. I mean, it gets really complicated, but basically wherever wherever the laser hits a sensor and timing and all that stuff, they're able to determine where the thing is in world space.
Right, right.
And the tracking on that, I think the delay is about 3 or 4 milliseconds,
Oh,
might
it's
be
pretty
even less.
fast. Yeah,
It's extremely low.
it needs to be under 10 milliseconds for the human mind to be convinced, right? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. If you break over 10 milliseconds or even 90 FPS, that's the other thing you need to know. I
Wow.
think it's like I think actually you can pull off 60 FPS and it's fine. PSVR is saying that all their games have to have a minimum of 60 FPS. They cannot go lower or they will not be published.
Gotcha.
Um, uh, so anything over 60 FPS and has a minimum delay of like 4 milliseconds, and you're fine.
So is that must be when you develop, I think about you have to think about all these new things that other developers probably haven't had to think about before, right? Because
Mhm.
you've got this delay issue, right? And on top of that, you've got to make sure you're building a game that doesn't make people totally confused and dizzy. And then furthermore, you have to program these new sensors in. And I imagine that programming with physical sensors is not anything like programming for, say, a standard first-person shooter.
Um,
I could
it
be wrong though.
the input is different. I think you can still apply. Well, okay, you can apply like all the standard game development theory techniques, ideas to VR. It's more now of the input that you have to worry about.
Hmm.
You want to be careful with
What do you mean by
how.
input as well, too? Sorry.
So I mean, normally with a non-VR game, it's either going to be an Xbox controller or mouse and keyboard or PS like a PlayStation controller, DualShock. Um, I think some people might have even hacked like the Wiimotes type of thing.
That's
But you really want to be that input is different in VR because now it's one-to-one motion, at least with the Vive. It's one-to-one motion, and you're able to uh, basically you can now reach out and grab things. And that's a completely different thing. That's a completely different feeling than reaching over with your mouse, clicking on something.
Yeah.
And so some people have like tried to remake games like almost one-to-one of a standard PC counterpart. So like remaking a first-person shooter, and they're kind of boring because, at least to me, because you're kind of like there, but you're not really immersed. It feels like it's just a normal game. So there are a lot of games now like Hover Junkers, Brookhaven Experiment, which I haven't tried, but I've only watched videos of, and like Budget Cuts and all these games that really that are kind of pushing how you do standard type of fight, like standard types of games.
Yeah.
So like Budget Cuts is a new way. It's like a VR way of doing stealth games. Hover Junkers, I think is probably right now like probably the best first-person shooter on the market for VR.
Interesting.
I
haven't had a chance to play that, but I've read about it, and it looks awesome.
Hover Junkers is great. And Budget Cuts is fantastic.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to trying. Are these Vive games or these Oculus games?
They're Vive games. I think if I remember the announcement correctly, I think they said that Hover Junkers was going to be coming to the Rift 2. I think they were saying that.
Very cool.
So I'm not getting in trouble by saying that. I'm almost like I'm like 99% sure they publicly said that.
And if he's wrong, make sure to put it in the comments. No, because you will anyways. Well,
I don't take my word for it because I am not a developer of Hover Junkers.
I do appreciate all that background on VR in general. I know a lot of folks aren't familiar with it yet. I know people have read stuff. Maybe they've been to a convention and saw a demo. They went to a Comic-Con type thing and they saw a demo. But a lot of folks really don't really know what we're talking about. So I do appreciate you giving us that background. And I'd like to launch into now Light Repair Team number 4. I'm just going to read a brief description for the folks back home. And I had the chance to play this, and this is the footage you're watching now on Twitch or on YouTube. But Light Repair Team number 4 is a light reflection puzzle game where you play as a light pipe repair person. Figure out how to properly bounce, combine, and split light so that you can return power to nearby buildings. And like I said, I had a chance to play this. It was really, really cool. I think that the thing that I really found the most uncanny, and this is partly just the VR experience in general, but also with your game because of the way the light beams kind of intersect the playing field, you're always sort of bending different beams of light. And I found myself ducking underneath them and moving around them, and that kind of trying to avoid them because I really felt that if I stepped in the way, that I was gonna, get a hole in me, which I thought was kind of a really interesting experience. I'd never felt anything like that before. So tell me a little bit about this game and why it is that you decided to build Light Repair Team Number Four.
Um, so it started off back in December. I guess I should say the footage you're showing now is all the development stuff. So you're kind of watching the progression of the game grow, which I think is nice. I tried to record as much as I possibly could, just for the sake of development purposes. I like doing that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But originally the game, I got my Vive back in December, and originally the game actually started off as a butterfly catching simulator.
Oh, funny.
And
I can see the nets there with some of those.
Yeah, yeah, actually, it's a similar mesh.
That's funny.
Yeah, I started off trying to think of just something fun to do. And just was like, oh, well, you know what? Just don't care about what you do. You need to do something to practice. Like, I needed to know how everything worked. I needed to explain it to myself. I needed to understand it. Working with Unreal, I had to understand that new pipeline for VR, and it wasn't very hard. It took a couple of days to figure this out. And after a couple of days, I had a somewhat working butterfly catching simulator. I was like, cool, awesome. But what happened one day was, I'm like, we could probably do a little better than this. And one day I was messing around, just testing some stuff out, and all of a sudden I was swinging at a butterfly, and I swung too early, and the butterfly hit the net and bounced off and off into another direction. I was like, huh, laser beams. I don't know why I came up with that, but funny. It was just, that's what it was.
Had you
I was like,
moment with the butterflies.
It was a eureka moment with butterflies, and I was like, all right, fine. And so I ended up going, all right, let's just make this puzzle game. And I remember playing like these laser reflection games, like they're all over, like Flash all over and stuff.
Yeah.
And even like there's a lot of 2D Flash games like it.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a 2D game that we could totally step up. I mean, this is a game that it wasn't super popular. I mean, it's not like it's an FPS, or it's not like an RPG or something. Puzzle games are kind of lower. I personally think RPGs are a little bit lower on the popularity spectrum. They're not niche, but they're not like mainstream. Right. You're not seeing like big AAA puzzle games coming out all the time.
Yeah.
But I was like, these are games that I enjoyed making. I was working on another puzzle game with Noah, and that was that was it. I mean, and so like I had all this puzzle making experience. I was like, oh, we could crank some fun stuff out. So over a span of 2 weeks, with the help of Noah and a friend of mine named Matt, they helped me figure out some blueprint code to get this to get like the laser beams to work. And I made like the laser reflection. I made the mirrors and the lenses, and I made some puzzles using those. And then I made the prisms the following week, made some prisms with those. And one day Noah was like, Joe, you can make a whole game out of this. Like, oh yeah, I could, couldn't I? And it was never the intention to really finish this game. And it was never the intention to make it a launch title.
That's fun.
It kind of, everything just kept falling into place. And I don't want to sound like ungrateful or like egotistical or something about saying that, but like really it did.
Kind of in the right place at the right time.
It was one of the very few game projects that I've had where from the very beginning I knew exactly how everything should be going, and like how I wanted everything to look and to play, and I knew what the feel wanted to be, and I had it all in my head. And I was like, this is exactly what I wanted to do, and I just started jamming out on it. And I figured, 25 levels, that's pretty simple. So we launched with 25 levels, that type of thing. And so I kept working on it, and beginning of March, I was like, all right, we got 3 more levels, like, or no, it was probably like I had like 15 levels made. That was when we made the first trailer
Mm,
for it, announcing that we would be on Steam. Um, at the time, only 5 levels were detailed and 15 were built,
mm,
and 20 were designed total. So I had 5 that were on paper that I hadn't built yet. So I still had 10 left to build and or design
mm.
at the beginning of March. And the Vive, we didn't know the Vive was coming out on April 5th at that time.
Right.
So I was kind of hoping that it would be coming later.
Yeah.
Like I think like I was like saying, as a consumer, I was hoping that the 5 came early April. As a developer, I sure as hell hope that it came late.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was right
Sure, you
as a
weren't
consumer.
alone on that one either.
Oh yeah, no, I know plenty of people who were in a similar boat. But
That seems like kind of a problem in general right now with these VR launches is, there aren't enough titles. It kind of reminds me of a lot of console launches like especially Nintendo's been bad with this. They've had a lot of, consoles come out with almost no launch titles, and it's surprising to me that they pushed it out as quickly as they did, mostly for that reason, if anything.
yeah, no, it was definitely I definitely wouldn't disagree with that.
Mm.
Coming up with I think we were counting at one point when I got my Vive in December. My friend Matt and I, we were figuring that of the like independent developers who applied for to get like Vive kits, we figured that there was maybe only 700 in circulation.
Wow.
That number we are pretty sure is actually a lot higher because we didn't factor in multiple companies getting multiple headsets,
Right. Right.
development companies. I know of some people right now who have like a fair few. They have like 10 or something because they have a large amount of people at their office and they need extras. So we didn't really count that in, but there was probably 1,000 at the time.
That's
And
still not very
then
many.
yeah, no, not very many. And then
Yeah.
the pre came out and they were like, we have 7,000 slated, and they were still handing those out. I mean, they were still handing, I think if we did the estimates correctly, there was still like a few thousand left at the beginning of April
Mm.
for developer kits. So, I mean, really at the time at launch, there was maybe only under 10,000 Vives for development in circulation
Wow.
that we could tell.
That's
Um,
wild.
we don't really have that information, nor did we really even ask for it.
Oh yeah. That
So
was
this is all speculation.
Yeah, that was another thing I was going to ask is, are you in contact at all with HTC or Valve as a developer? Do they give you, do they give you support or feedback or anything?
Valve has usually, like, every time I've emailed the VR folks at Valve, they have been super super helpful and they've been very gracious with their time, and they were super duper helpful in getting questions answered and stuff like that. So
That's very good to hear. Yeah, I mean, it just seems like sometimes that they were I don't know if this was more Oculus than HTC and Valve, but it felt like they had given out all these developer kits and then said, "Hey, make some stuff. We don't know how to do it, so figure it out."
yeah, well, that's the thing. No one does.
Yeah,
That's the thing that everyone keeps saying about VR is that no one knows what to do with it yet.
Yeah, well, and that's why I say, I can truly say, like, I got to play some of the other things you mentioned, where it's like a video game that was never designed in VR, just kind of pulled into VR. Like I had this thing called Vorpex. I played like Shadows of Mordor in VR. I played Grand Theft Auto in VR, and it's
Yeah.
exactly like you said. It's just that game, but in VR. And it's like my friend. I always laugh. He's got one of the Gear VRs, and all he uses it for is to watch Netflix. And I just find, that funny because he doesn't actually, he's not very compelled by any of the other games available. And so he's actually enjoys this sort of bizarre experience of being in a virtual movie.
Yeah, I got to try something called Oculus Social. That was my very first VR experience.
Hmm.
A friend of mine works at a research company out in Seattle named Rat Labs. Shout out to them. I went to his apartment in Seattle in November of last year. I was like, Aaron, you do VR, show me what you got. And he just was like, all right, here's a Gear VR. And he just like slapped it on my head, put his phone in, and put me into Oculus Social. And I was watching a League of Legends stream with some random guy from Kansas.
That's awesome.
And I was just like, I turned over, I was like, hey, dude, what's up? And he goes, hey, how you doing?
You could hear him talking?
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
funny.
yeah.
I'll
He
have
picked
to
it up
try
through the
that
mic. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is wild.
And
Um,
I was like, all right, I need to know more about this.
Yeah, we will get to more about the future of VR, but I did want to still ask you another thing about Light Repair Team. I just was curious to know if you'd like thought about backstory for this because I was trying to imagine one. I was like Light Repair Team. So these guys are why are they out there fixing laser beams? What are they? Why did they decide that they need to bend light to do things?
Yeah.
And who are Light
Um,
Repair Teams 1 through 3?
okay, so light repair teams. So that was like one of the first few questions asked when we went onto Steam was why number 4? And the question was because I say so. That's the answer. We're doing 4 because I wanted to do 4. Um,
It's good enough reason.
yeah. And for Light Repair Team 1, Light Repair Team number 1, there is a backstory, I should say. It's all in my head, so it's kind of headcanon. And it was actually only just this past week when I started writing up the actual lore book, I want to say. Kind of like the lore story, and I'm not done with it yet. I have like the overall synopsis of Light Repair Team 4.
Oh, cool. Are you prepared to
And
talk about it?
I'm not too prepared,
Okay,
but
that's
it
fine.
is a bit of a futuristic sci-fi. I watched Blade Runner and had a lot of good ideas.
Nice.
Portal, what were the other
I
things? I
did
pull a
get a.
lot of just. It's kind of like yeah, I think I kind of made it more towards the satirical side of all the other sci-fi films where like iRobot, everyone's rebelling against the robots and how it's usually always the technologically advanced people are the evil ones.
Right.
I reversed it in the story, so at least in the lore, the bad guys, if you so choose to call them that, aren't actually the technologically advanced ones.
That's interesting.
So it's a bit weird. We were talking about doing a story mode, and I think I don't want to officially say that it's out, but the story will definitely somehow make its way into the game.
Nice.
Either just through narrative, through like art, or an actual story mode. Probably the latter, the
Very
first
cool.
one, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But so that's the story. And Light Repair Team number 1, they work in the story for those are set in stone. The Light Repair Team 1, they work with the high government in the center of the city, which you can actually see in the distance in a lot of the puzzles. Light
What
Repair
I was going to
Team,
mention is there's actually some great backgrounds and backdrops to the
yeah.
yeah.
Light Repair Team number 2 works off in a different part of the city, and Light Repair Team number 3 we just don't talk about.
Hasn't been heard from.
We don't talk about them there. It just
Yeah, it's a hard subject.
it's touchy. That was a
But
lot of counseling.
well, and yeah, I mean, I definitely see plenty of opportunity here to get creative with the backstory, especially in sci-fi. And sci-fi is one of my favorite, movie genres, book genres. So I can see myself easily enjoying a fun backstory while solving these puzzles. Well, one of the questions also that came to my mind is what puzzle games I should say when you play puzzle games, did those influence you at all in the making of this one? Is there one puzzle game that comes to mind when you think about thinking about your own game that inspired you the most?
Portal
Mm.
2 has like a lot of people cite Portal 2 as the big laser, like they have the big laser array things
Right.
when the lasers get rerouted and that type of thing. A lot of people cite Portal 2. I borrowed some puzzle ideas on how they do progression for that. Um, whatever, like there was a lot of puzzles I looked at that didn't have tutorials, that just kind of introduced mechanics via gameplay, which is what we do. I was I'm not a huge fan of tutorials because I think they can be boring if they're done incorrectly. But I didn't trust myself I didn't trust myself to make a good tutorial. So I was just like, we're just going to do it in game and I'm going to make it simple that way. And so like in the first 10 levels, you learn all the mechanics in the first 25.
Gotcha.
Type of thing.
I mean, it was pretty intuitive. I did really, I enjoyed the process too of sort of examining each of the objects that were there and how they affected light. I mean, you helped me along a little bit because I know you were trying to usher the demos along and make sure no one
Yeah.
got stuck for too long and no one had to stay in line forever.
Yeah.
But I did really like that. I felt like there were all these different little pieces and I could grab one. Literally felt like I could grab one with the controller, which you grab with the right trigger. And when you turn your hand, just like you see here in the video, it literally does bend the mirror, and that moves the laser all around, and it feels really good. It feels really tactile
Yeah.
for a game that is probably this is all new, right? These controls are brand new, so I'm sure it's in its infancy.
Yeah, we're still, I think we just put in on a patch on Monday or last Monday, I forget now. No, yeah, this past Monday, where we actually fix the controls. And so now they're not necessarily one-to-one, they're like a rounded one-to-one. So if you have kind of shaky hands, these actually now smooth things out.
I can see
So
that.
you can now focus on the farther and more distant receivers easily.
Yeah, I remember that was one of my problems. To be fair, I was very caffeinated that day. But I every time I'd let go of the trigger, it would just
Yeah,
just a little.
it doesn't do that anymore.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. Even still, though, it wasn't too. After you'd fidget once or twice, you'd get it in the right place.
Yeah, but yeah, and that was actually in the developer build that was unstable that we couldn't properly.
Oh, that's too bad.
So,
and
yeah, so we fixed that up, and so like that was something that, and we're still, I think we still have some improvement we could probably make.
Yeah, I mean you're breaking boundaries here, so you're among the first to get this right. There's no guidebook, I imagine.
No, we're writing it as we go and rewriting it and all that fun stuff.
That's pretty cool. Well, looking back too, you said that Portal 2 is an influence, but it's hard to be influenced when making VR games, right? Like you could say, oh, like I love playing. Maybe you grew up playing Super Mario's, but how could that influence a VR game? But nonetheless, I will ask the question: when you grew up, what games did you play, and did those influence the games you make now, particularly this VR title?
I actually didn't play many games as a kid. I really consider my hardcore gaming career at the end of my high school year, beginning of college.
Oh, interesting.
When I beginning of college is when I got a laptop that actually could play games. That was when I was first introduced to Steam, type of thing. That was back in 2009. So I mean, it wasn't too far after when Steam got started. But as a kid, I mean, I played. Actually, I played a puzzle game it was a puzzle and logic reasoning game called Logical Journeys and Beanies. I still play it. I still play it today. I actually still play it today. They did a remastered. Yeah, they played it. They have a remastered version. I have it on my phone.
That's funny.
And I play it.
I actually also played that as a child. That was one of my first PC games. Yeah.
I played in high school. I played Guild Wars.
Oh, yep.
And RuneScape in middle school. I think every kid in middle school probably played RuneScape at one point.
Yeah, a lot of RuneScape. Yeah.
Loved RuneScape. Love. I love most RPGs in general. Like I played, like I said, Guild Wars, RuneScape were my two middle school, high school games, and then Team Fortress 2 when I started college, and I still do stuff with TF2. I mean, TF2 is actually how I got my start in this. In doing game design and realizing that it was something that I really enjoyed doing and was half decent at.
Wow. So how did that come to? Did you had you had any technical background before you were a gamer? Really? No. Wow.
No, I knew that I liked games, and I knew that I always liked to think that I was a very artistic person. I always was the one who was doing the extra crazy thing in art class in elementary, middle, and high school and stuff like that. But I never really put games together because I was musical. I did art. I was okay at drawing. I'm okay at painting. I'm pretty good writer, at least for informative stuff like that. And so video games are kind of like the mashup of everything. And so I enjoy doing that. And I kind of discovered that freshman year of high school. I remember very vividly. It was one Saturday morning. I was bored. I didn't want to do my homework. And I was waiting for my then girlfriend, now fiance, to wake up, and so we could go to brunch. And so I was just bored, and I cracked open the Hammer editor for TF2, and I found a tutorial, and I got started. I made a
Oh,
crappy map that morning,
wow, that's pretty cool.
and I just kind of kept going.
That's awesome. I mean, you got your start at Team Fortress 2. That's really cool. It's funny. Video games have, I think, been a part of a lot of people's lives, and certainly for people that are gamers and the pursuits they've ended up in. For me personally, I played StarCraft way back in the day. Met some friends on BattleNet. One of them asked me to build a website for him, and I knew nothing about websites, so I just started doing it. And now I help out on our website, and I've done some web development, throughout my life. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's amazing how one game can just provide, the right
yeah,
environment.
yeah. It's I think if I got very lucky into getting into some projects for TF2 that kind of had some decent returns,
Mm.
and if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't be doing this right now.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
so I'm pretty I consider myself pretty fortunate and pretty lucky to be with where I am now.
Well, and so on that subject of Team Fortress 2, have you had the chance to play it in VR yet?
Yes,
Yes. Nice.
yes, I did. That was one of the first things I did when I got the Vive. I got that hooked up and working, and it was actually quite fun. It was really weird. I would be like in the game, I'm like, guys, I'm playing in VR, and they're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
That's
I'm
funny.
like, no, really, I can see you're behind me, and they're like, okay, that's creepy.
And your character models got
Yeah,
its
just my
face in the wrong
head's
direction.
turning around, kind of like in The Exorcist.
That's,
Um,
did you
yeah.
notice that it improved your ability to play?
Uh, it was easier to like look around because like when I turned my head, I could still be firing in one direction,
Mm.
so I could see if like spies were coming up.
Mhm.
But I was also at the handicap of I was in VR, so I didn't. The controls were the same, but it just felt different, and so things were weird, and I was just really getting used to it. And so it kind of actually felt like I was pretty much even to
Oh,
where I
interesting.
was, despite so even though I had an advantage because I could like look around better than anyone else,
Yeah, you
I
can.
was at a disadvantage because I was in VR. Um, and if you ever play TF2 in VR, never play as a scout.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I got a chance to play it. There was a brief honeymoon when I had my DK2, and Steam still allows you to play Steam VR beta on the DK2. So I got to play some Team Fortress 2, and yeah, I mean, I remember I couldn't play Scout. It was entirely too fast. Um,
Scouts too fast. Everyone else is
yeah.
fine. Heavy medic, I think, are probably the best ones.
Yeah.
Sniper was broken unless you played as a huntsman
Oh, interesting.
with the
Interesting.
bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually, even then, it was really fun.
Well, that's cool. I mean, it's really gonna change. I think the way people play games. And I do know personally, I felt like I did a lot better with the Oculus on because I hadn't played Team Fortress 2 in about a year and a half, and then I jumped in and I got 9 kills and two with only 2 deaths just with a Rocket Man with the soldier. Which I was very surprised that I was going to do that. I expected to fully lose and to have a horrible time and be very dizzy. I still was dizzy, but
Yeah,
I found that it was a great experience.
I
Um,
don't I don't get too motion sick. I probably get motion sick less now that I have VR.
mm,
I would like to thank Cover Junkers for helping me build up my tolerance. Um,
the so-called VR legs, right?
Simulation sickness, I believe, is
Oh, is that
the
the
is the
official?
term that everyone uses, or sim sickness.
Gotcha.
Um, but yeah, and I think I built up a bit of an immunity. I was actually just before this, I was testing a game that a friend of mine just put up on Steam, and it is like they were like, we're still testing this. Please tell us if you puke.
That's funny.
um,
Yeah. No, I've definitely had some near close calls while playing the Oculus, particularly for games that aren't optimized well.
yeah,
Um, Well, and so because of my particular experience, at least in Team Fortress 2, I really got to thinking, hey, VR isn't just about creating new experience. I mean, you've got a very unique thing in Laser Repair Team number 4 that it can only exist, I think, in VR. And you could use a mouse and a keyboard if you wanted in a first person, but I think it would probably not deliver the same experience.
yeah. I have an idea on how to make it work for PC,
Oh,
and
so you would like
maybe
to port, I guess, port
well,
it.
I have a lot of ideas about a lot of things. It doesn't mean that it will be doing it.
Right,
Um,
right.
like I like it's just more problems, and I just like solving problems. So one of the one of them was like, well, if we had to port this to PC, what would we do?
Right.
And I kind of came up with a way on how it would work.
Hmm.
Fine, it would and make sense in the story and stuff like that. But I don't know if we're ever going to do that anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Well, and I feel like that's just a tricky thing too, because you're going to want people to play your game, of course. You know, take advantage of your hard work, but you have to have $1,000 worth of VR equipment and then
yeah.
$2,000 PC to run that. It's a steep ask.
Going into this, we knew this wasn't going to be like with like with traditional games, traditional non-VR games. You go, this isn't. You kind of go and you get a majority of your sales like in the first week, and you get a lot of your return in the first week, and that wasn't the case. And we knew that going in, and we knew that this was not going to be a short-term like recoup of the amount of time that we and money that we would have spent. Actually, the game was made on a budget of like nothing really. I mean, the only thing that went in was man hours,
Right.
and we haven't recouped that time yet. But
Right.
I don't think any, and I'm almost certain no one has. I would be very surprised if somebody has.
Do you expect that to change? Do you expect?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, the lead up to that was it is going to be these are not short term investments. These are long term investments. And I think when we're treating it kind of as such, we're gonna keep. We have plans for updates that we're going to keep adding stuff to, and we'll go from there. And we want to make sure that in the long term, this is a very nice product to have.
Well, so particularly now speaking in the long term, there's a lot of folks out there that say VR is a fad, VR is a gimmick. It's easily, arguments can be made about how VR has been tried in the past and has failed. Of course, I would argue those attempts are the most half-hearted attempts at VR ever. You know, things like the Virtual Boy and various 3D technologies for televisions. So my question for you is, what would you say to someone that says VR is a fad, this will not exist in 2 or 3 years?
The first question I usually ask when someone's like, I don't like VR, is have you tried it? And if they have tried VR and they genuinely don't think it's very good, I'll say, well, have you tried, like, what did you try? And if it's like Gear VR, I'll be like, you're probably right with that. Why don't you try a Vive or a Rift the next time you can, and promise me that you'll do that? And I usually don't argue with those people because it's not really. I can't. You can't argue somebody into liking VR. You have to show people the true capabilities of VR. And right now, there's a lot of things that can do that, but there's also a lot of things that don't do that. And so I don't really want to necessarily argue with it's a fad or not, because I don't think that we've had enough time to really give it its full shot. And we're still figuring things out and still trying to make things work, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. Right now, for locomotion, everyone's using teleportation. Except then there was one guy who came out and he figured out how to do it by running in place by sticking a controller in your pants. Like, we're like, wait, this is genius too. This is wonderful. How did we not figure this out? Does it have to be in your pants? No. Okay, even better.
Where I keep all my controllers, but you know.
I actually do stick them in my pocket whenever I'm not using them. I'll drop them in my pocket, and they work perfectly fine. I know some people who have holsters like utility belts that they just slide them in like gun
intense.
holsters.
That's intense. So you would say that really to naysayers that it's just because they haven't experienced it and that's why they feel that way. That I mean, obviously you're bought in. This is not to you. This is not a fad.
Well, no, I hope it's not a fad because this is kind of what my job is right now.
But I imagine you wouldn't have pursued it at all if this seemed like it wasn't.
No, if I felt I was actually a VR skeptic.
Why is that? What was your reservation?
I thought it was just going to be another peripheral. Honestly, I thought it was kind of like this time last year. I even think around this time last year, I made a tweet about it saying, I think VR is just going to end up being another peripheral.
Oh, amazing.
And
And now
like,
you're
just
celebrating.
like it's going to be just like another, it's going to be just like another controller.
Yeah.
And I finally got to try it, and I started getting swayed by some of the things that I saw. A friend of mine, Tim Johnson, he's working on a game called Sluggy's Fruit Emporium.
Mm.
This adorable fruit stall simulator game. It is absolutely adorable. Um, he got his Vive well before I did, and he started posting videos about it, and he was hooked on it, and it was kind of his enthusiasm was like, all right, Tim, what do you got? What are you showing me here? And he was like, these are all the things that I'm doing with it, and he was showing me videos, and I think the thing that really made me interested about it was he was playing Fantastic Contraption. And if you've ever seen Fantastic Contraption, you're building these contraptions to get a little ball named Hammy into a big, like, pink volume, like into a goal.
It's like a co-op, right? I believe.
No, it's kind of like it's a construction game.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's a construction puzzle game.
Got you. Okay.
But he was playing this, and the thing that really made me really interested in this was the fact that he goes, oh, I don't want this here. He would pick it up with the controller and he would throw it over his shoulder, and that was it. And I was like, wait a second, he's now throwing that. And for some odd reason, I thought that was the coolest freaking thing ever. I'm
Yeah.
like, you can throw things.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the first things that, like, when I got my Vive, I booted up Fantastic Contraption. And the first thing I did was I took this little cat there's like a cat. I forget what the name of the cat is. I can't remember. But anyways, I just started taking stuff and just started throwing it off the cat. I was just grabbing it and throwing it. And it was wonderful.
You had a good time with that.
I picked up the cat. I threw the cat.
That's really funny.
And it just came back to me. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. And it was stupid. I mean, it was like stupidly fun.
Yeah.
But it was like, it's little things like that. It's those little additions to controls that you, like, in a normal traditional game, you can throw things, but you don't physically throw things.
Mm.
And it was that one thing. I was just like, well, crap, that's something that we can do.
That's really, yeah.
And
cool.
and it was pretty and from then on, I had, like I said, in November, I had a friend show me his VR collection of stuff, and then I got my Vive in December, and it's just been all up or downhill, depending on how you want to look at it from there.
That's awesome. I apologize. I have people messaging me. So, I'm trying to find the best way to ask this, because it's easy to say, like, oh, do you imagine everyone sitting next to each other in the future wearing goggles? But I don't think that that's what's going to happen. I don't think you're going to see a lot of people, probably sitting in a living room together wearing HMDs. What do you imagine people actually, do you see people being by themselves as they use this? Do you see them being with other people as they use this? Is it what is your idea of the fundamental VR experience?
So one of the things that a lot of people were worried about was isolation with VR, because you're the only one in the headset. But there has been a lot of really good, I don't want to say advancements, but they were advancements in spectator tech. Painty, which is on Steam now, it's a painting simulator, and Job Simulator. I think both have like two of the best in-game spectating modes, where you can just flip a switch and you get a video camera right in front of you. And you can use that video camera and you can put it wherever you want and angle it at anything you want. And so it's almost like you're videotaping yourself in the real world, or in the virtual world. And people can watch that, and you can set it up to however you want, and then you can just have people watch you. And there's actually something really fun about, I can't explain it because I haven't figured out why yet, but a lot of people find it really entertaining to watch people do things in VR while waiting to do the same thing in VR.
Right.
It's kind of like, I can't tell if they just think it's funny because they're pantomiming this, like, really, like, when you're in VR, you look stupid. Like, I'll be 100% honest. You don't look cool in VR. You look kind of stupid in VR because you have this big black thing on your face, and you're like reaching out and grabbing stuff and walking around. And
You know,
there's
Noah took
pictures
a
of
picture of me up close, and I'm just standing there with my mouth open, staring into space. I'm just like,
yeah, it's weird, and you're just like, why looks stupid, but people find it entertaining, and it's actually turned out to be a lot more social than I think a lot of people expected.
That's interesting.
So I think it could go either way. I think it depends on the game, really. Some games are more fun to watch than others.
I agree with that.
And I'm not going to tell developers like to develop social. Social things are always better, but you should have some form of social feature, but you don't necessarily need to make that a super priority all the time. I think right now in its infancy, it's very important because we want to be able to show VR to as many people as possible. But maybe in 5 years' time, it might not be that big of a deal.
Gotcha.
Because there might be built-in things. I know VR or VReal streaming just came out. They have a thing for that now where you can actually like stream in VR.
Oh, wow.
And you can watch people stream in VR.
Oh, that's have you tried that?
Not yet. No, it's still in. I think they're still in beta.
Well, I hate to say we're creeping up on the end of our time here, but I really feel like I could talk about this subject for a long, long time. I mean, VR I find is to be just so fascinating, and I've never had the chance. You're the first developer I've been able to talk to specifically about VR, so I really just appreciate the chance to talk to you about your experiences. You're obviously very knowledgeable about what's going on in this industry right now, particularly in relation to regular games, because you've also made a lot of regular games. So yeah, not to for everyone out there, we are looking at Light Repair Team #4, but Eerie Bear Games, if you go to their website, they have other games that are not VR that you can also check out.
Yeah, we got to get back to that one.
That's right. When you're done producing your launch title.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day too, and we were like, "Oh yeah, there's that other game we were working on." So,
well, when that's ready to be released, we'll have to talk about that one.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for being with us today, Joe.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for stopping by the booth when you were at PAX.
Oh yeah,
we were kind of hidden away. We were kind of hidden away in the corner.
You were, but I'm really glad I found you because it was an awesome experience playing Light Repair Team #4. Still the best VR experience I've had to date, and I have tried the DK2, and I've tried the Gear VR, and many games in between, and I even got to demo yet another Oculus game at IndieCade that very next weekend, and yours was still by far more entertaining. So just to heap more praise, good job. I really respect the work you've done, and I hope you guys keep it up.
Thanks.
So for all you guys out there, thanks for watching. Again, we're OPNoobs.com, PC gaming by PC gamers. We really would appreciate it if you went to our website, OPNoobs.com, and checked us out. We've got a Patreon there as well. So please visit our Patreon. All the money that you guys send us, we really do appreciate. It goes towards the games that we use every week to send out reviews, and it helps fund this establishment that we get to enjoy every weekend, and you guys get to see great developer talks. So if you like those, please consider a donation. And if you own an HTC Vive, if you're one of those lucky few that do, go out and try Light Repair Team #4. You really, really won't regret it.
It's only $8.
It's only $8. That's such a bargain. Oh my goodness, is that a bargain? I might even get rid of my Oculus and buy a Vive.
We were joking at PAX. I don't know if you were around for that, but people were like, "Wow, where's your game?" I'm like, "It's on Steam." You have a Vive? No. Well, for the low price of $808 plus shipping.
Yes, that deal cannot be ignored, folks. $808. You got to do it. So thanks again, Joe, for being with us. And Stylo, if you please, would take us out. Goodbye, everybody.